Yo, what's good? What's going on, guys? Come on in. We're going to have some fun tonight. It's hump day, almost the weekend. I know y'all are excited, right? Let me know you're live in the chat. How's everybody's week going? Let me know. Somebody say something. All right, Joel Gaines. Hey, what's going on, bro? Glad to see you. All right. I'm feeling a little silly today, so this one will be a little bit more fun than normal. Arnold, hey, what's good, bro? Good to see you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me fade down my theme music. So, welcome to the show. Welcome to the latest A Fresh Perspective episode here. Before we get started, please share and subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to do that. Hit that bell so that you'll be notified whenever I go live or whenever I upload a video. It'll be awesome. And again, please share. I really appreciate all of your support. You guys have been awesome in helping me grow this channel. I'm getting more and more subscribers every single day. So please keep it up. We want to have more of these conversations. And believe it or not, I'm not the only one who can give people a fresh perspective. All right. It's not just me. That's the name of my show. Yes, this is my show, but y'all got some fresh perspectives too. It's not just me. So we want more and more people here to join the conversation. Now, as always, if you want to support my work, you can subscribe to my online community at afreshperspective.locals.com. Afreshperspective.locals.com. That's the rhythm to it. Afreshperspective@locals.com. That link will be also in the show notes. And as always, if you don't want to do a one-time donation, you can. The links to that are also in the show notes, and they should be appearing up here soon. This thing is going slow for some reason, but yes, if you want to do a one-time donation, you can hit me there. I appreciate all of the support. It helps me continue to be a full-time content creator. It helps me to continue bringing you the content that you love. So also check out my audio-only podcast. It drops every Thursday, and that will give you content that I'm not doing here on the live streams. I talk about other subjects, other topics. So check that out on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever podcast service you use. Make sure you give me a 5-star rating and also leave a comment. That helps me out a lot as well. Now, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick. And it looks like he took a break, but he's back. And we're going to talk about a question that I asked on Twitter, mainly for conservatives, about welfare. And we're also going to talk about what happened with the Liz Cheney vote today. I'm sure you already know. But I want to talk specifically about the Republicans who are a little ass mad about it, and they want to leave the party and start their own thing. I want to talk about that because that's more interesting than it seems like. But first, before I get into all that, I have a question that I'm going to ask you, and I want the answer off the top of your head. Put it in the chat. But I want put the answer in the chat, so I want to see what you guessed. And no looking it up, no cheating. I'm going to know if you cheat. Here's my question. Of all of the people that are on welfare right now, what percentage do you think Black Americans make up of that? Of the amount of people who are on welfare right now, what percentage of those individuals are Black Americans? All right. So go ahead and put in the chat. I'm going to come back to your answers before I dive into that subject, but I thought I'd ask it early on so that you would have time to put it in there. So first, we're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick. And he's back. He's back, and he's still peddling that white progressive garbage. Now, before I get into this, I will say, and this might piss off some conservatives, I do not think that Colin Kaepernick is a bad guy. I do think he's, on the grift a bit, well, a lot. but I think he really believes the crap that he's spewing. I've seen him do other things as far as philanthropy, getting money into the Black community to help Black children, all that stuff. So I love that about him. So I'll never treat him like he's an evil person. I come at him differently because I think for the most part, his heart is in the right place. I think he does want to help the Black community. And in some ways, I think he's got the right idea when it comes to actually putting resources into building up Black communities. A lot of athletes don't do that. So he's giving back to the community. I will respect anybody who does that, even if I disagree with their politics. But when it comes to what he wants to do with the police, he's on some of that bullshit. So I got to talk about it. So you may have already seen, but he tweeted out today, he made an announcement that his publishing company, which I didn't even know he owned a publishing company, but they're going to be releasing a book, which is a collection of essays, a lot of which are calling for the abolition of the police and the abolition of the prison system. Now, this is an initiative that is very prevalent on the hard left, not just on the regular left. I think most people on the left want some sort of police reform, but they're not necessarily trying to get rid of the police. And that's not so with people like Colin Kaepernick. And while I know he's half Black, half white, this is a white progressive initiative. This originated from a white progressive, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But he went on Twitter and he said, quote, "The book will be a collection of essays and other writings calling for, among other things, the abolition of police and prisons." So he wrote, "Today, I'm excited to share that we at Kaepernick Publishing will be releasing our first title, Abolition for the People, the Movement for a Future Without Policing and Prisons, on October 12th of this year." So it'll be released in the fall. He also said, quote, "This anthology builds on decades of organizing and writing against policing and prisons, and features the work of over 30 contributors, plus a reader's guide infographics and cover art by Emory Douglas." I'm not sure who Emory Douglas is. I'll have to look him up. Now, here's the thing. It sounds like the content of this book is already available. It looks like they already have the collection of essays on a Medium page. And I'll try to remember to put that in the show notes. I haven't gotten to read them yet, but I do want to dig into them, and then I'll talk about them later. But I mean, you guys already know about Colin Kaepernick. He became controversial a few years ago when he started kneeling during the national anthem before football games, and people just couldn't shut up about it. President Trump, as he usually does, got involved and inflamed the issue. And here's always my take, because honestly, I got to a point where I was just tired of seeing his name. I wrote some articles on it, but I just refused at a certain point because I'm like, this guy is getting way too much press. I don't really even care. I mean, if I understood why he was kneeling. I was against the kneeling, not because I thought he was trying to disrespect the country, but because it was a bad strategic move. Now, they say, oh, it brought awareness to police brutality. No, there were plenty of other ways that he could have done that without alienating half the country and politicizing a form of entertainment that people don't want to be politicized on the left and the right. So I thought it was really an ill-advised move. It probably did more to damage the cause than to actually help it. And it may have inspired a lot of people on the left or on the hard left, but I don't see that it actually moved the needle. I think there were other ways he could. I had no problem with him protesting, by the way, but doing it in that way was going to alienate more people that he could have had on his side. Even people on the right. I know he wouldn't have gotten everybody on the right. I know how a lot of people are on the right when it comes to the police, but there is a very, very, very thick libertarian strain on the right now, even within the Republican Party. So he would have had some conservatives on his side if he didn't do it in the way that he did. But that was his choice. He did it. Did I think it was worth all the outrage? No. I mean, but on the right, we're reactionary, so that's what we do. We react, all right? So, but here's the thing. Kaepernick he was kind of going low key for a while. I mean, he would pop up every now and then, but you wouldn't really hear much from him. But now he is re-entering the national conversation on race and policing and police brutality, and he's doing it at a time when the hard left is calling for defunding and in a lot of cases abolishing the police. Now, this might seem like a good idea because this whole movement got a lot of traction last year. And the thing is, this whole thing goes way back. So the whole initiative to abolish police was actually originated by a man named James H. Marr, and he was a Pennsylvania state representative. And he introduced this measure in the 1920s. He submitted legislation to abolish the Pennsylvania State Police Force after he saw a police officer beat a 70-year-old citizen, which, as you know, obviously is abhorrent. And we see a lot of police do stuff like this today. Not all, not most, but way more than should be acceptable. And here's the thing about Marr. He wasn't a black man. He wasn't a liberal. He wasn't a conservative. He was a devout socialist, a white socialist. So that's what I mean when I say that Kaepernick is peddling white progressive ideas. This originated from white Marxists. And so now, fast forward to now, people are calling for defunding the police. And I understand that not everybody who says defund the police actually means to abolish the police. Here's my thing, and I've said it before. I just wrote another article about it a couple of days ago, and I said defunding the police in a way that results in fewer police officers in black communities is a white supremacist proposition, because it is. One, you're going against the will of black people. 81% want either the same amount of police in their neighborhoods or more. So you're ignoring what these people want in their neighborhoods because they're racist. The white progressives are racist. They don't care what black people think. They don't care how it affects black people. And on top of that, the consequences are going to be far worse for black people than it will for anybody else, blacks and Latinos. It'll be worse for them than it will ever be for white people. Although it will affect some white people too, right? If they got their way. I mean, there are white people living in high crime areas as well. So he's trying to push this, and he might think it's good timing, but I think he's going to be in for a rude awakening. Not just him, but also the rest of the people who want to do away with the police or have fewer police. Now, here's the thing. If if you take a city like Baltimore or Chicago or Los Angeles and you just get rid of the police, obviously the crime rates are going to spike. It's going to result in the deaths of more black people. It's going to result in more death, more theft. When people are allowed to run unchecked, this type of thing is inevitable. And here's the thing: I've had people say to me, "Well, the police officers don't save lives; they don't prevent crime; they enforce the law." Okay, yeah, but in so doing, they are preventing crime. When you look at homicide rates, people should automatically assume that each person that is killed by a different person. No, there are people who commit multiple murders. But however, if they kill somebody, then they're locked up, then they're less likely to be able to kill more people, right? And on top of that, we do know that police can save lives. If there's something going down and you call the police, and they roll up and they intervene, then they will have saved lives. But I do understand the argument that their main job is to enforce the law. But however, that still maintains some semblance of order, whereas taking the police out is just going to let people do what they want to do. Now, obviously, I mean, probably more would end up being armed. More black people would be armed. But then again, in the leftist utopia, black people wouldn't have, the law-abiding black people wouldn't have any guns. So there'd be fewer good black people, law-abiding black people, without the means to defend themselves from people who are going to get the guns illegally anyway. It would be a whole mess. And anybody with a modicum of common sense can see that. You have to engage in magical mental gymnastics to imagine that this would actually be good for the black community. And ironically, like I said, the people who are pushing for this would never have to experience the consequences of such a shitty policy. So basically, these white progressives and the black people who enable them would be sitting in their homes. They'd be tweeting about how virtuous they are. Meanwhile, you've got dead black people bleeding out in the streets because you removed the police when you knew that you were going to be safe. I can't see this as anything but white supremacy. You guys know I don't use that term loosely. I don't call people racist loosely, but this is some racist bullshit right here. And a lot of the people pushing for it don't even realize it. The elites do. The people who came up with it and people who are pushing it, they know that that's not going to help the Black community. They know it's not going to help. They just don't care. It gives them a way to say, if you're against what we're talking about, you're racist, blah, 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 yakety schmackety. So here, that's my view on defunding the police. It makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't even decreasing the number of police officers. Black people don't want fewer police. They want police reform. They want police to be held accountable when they do stuff that they're not supposed to be doing. So let's see what you guys are talking about in the chat here. Okay, I've got some numbers here, but I'll get to that in a second. Okay. Interesting. I lost respect for Kaepernick when I saw him wearing a Fidel Castro shirt. You can't be against oppression and support Fidel Castro at the same time. And that's why I just think he's not very educated on this stuff, honestly. Or either that, or he just is an out socialist and he's bought into that ideology. Either way, he's wrong. In food service, so all my Black friends are still worked all through the pandemic. Oh, wait, you're talking about something else. Okay, let's see. Kaepernick resigned with Nike, who has low wages for foreign labor. So boo to him. Were you trying to say he signed with Nike? But that doesn't really make sense either, because Nike participates in the oppression of brown people abroad. It's like they don't think a lot of this stuff through. Part of Kaepernick's difficulty was the position he played. If he'd been a middle linebacker, it would have played differently. But a quarterback is the team leader, and being divisive is a problem. See, and that kind of gets me to something else I've been talking about. I don't know how good of a player he was. I don't watch football, and I honestly don't care. He might be losing out on his job because he's controversial, or because he's just not good at his job, or both, or what have you. But I don't necessarily believe it's racism. I think there's some other stuff involved here. I will say, though, Kaepernick is not the only controversial football player. I mean, you've got football players going to jail for domestic battery. I mean, you got the Michael Vick situation. I mean, there's been a lot of NFL players who have engaged in conduct that is unbecoming. So I don't know if that excuse would be good enough. Although I will say they probably weren't politically divisive, so I can kind of understand that too. But yeah, I think there's more to that. Let's see. So let's see what numbers you guys came up with. Okay, I got 20%, 19%, 25%, 18%, and 12%. See, this is how I know that I have the best followers, because I know when I ask that question on Twitter, I'm going to get some different answers. So here's the thing. Let me pull it up really quick. Before I get into welfare, I'm going to give you the stats, because we love stats, because we're conservatives. So the biggest chunk of welfare recipients are non-Hispanic whites, which makes sense. There's more white people in the United States. They make up about 43% of everyone who uses welfare. Hispanics make up 28% of all welfare recipients, and non-Hispanic Blacks make up, drum roll, 23%. So everybody here was close. I expect that when I ask this question on Twitter, as long as people don't cheat, I'm going to be getting answers like 30, 40, 50%. And I hope I'm wrong about that, but I do expect to get those guesses, because the influencers make it sound like, like 150% of Black people are on welfare, or, they make up 150% of all welfare claims, and of course I'm exaggerating, but here's the thing. I was watching a debate, and that's why I posted that tweet earlier saying that I think I'm going to be challenging one of my fellow conservative YouTubers on this, because they were talking about, I can't remember the exact topic of the debate. I think some of it had, maybe not critical race theory, but somehow Black culture came up, and it was dealing with something involving the Black community. I don't know if it was Black Lives Matter or something like that, but they were talking about how the conservative side was talking about how the welfare system is mainly responsible for the conditions in which a lot of Black people find themselves. It is, and they also say that it's the reason for the wealth disparities between Black Americans and white Americans. And this is a very commonly used trope on the right. They think that most of the Black community's issues come from our culture being horrible and welfare, because welfare also led to fatherlessness. So those are like the three things that they attribute the problems facing the Black community to: welfare, which led to fatherlessness, and Black culture is just jacked up. And then you have a few who try to make it sound like, Black people are genetically predisposed to crime and poverty and all that stuff. So here's the thing about that. And that was the argument that this person was using. And the person I'm talking about, I don't dislike him. I actually, the debate that I participated in had him in it. And, we were both on the same side. But it's a common misconception. And I attribute it to ignorance. I don't attribute it to malice. I don't think that people are deliberately lying. And when I say ignorance, I just mean you don't know what you don't know. So I want to kind of put this out there. And I'm going to talk about this more than once. I may even do it again next week, because this is a very deep issue, and I want to be able to go in depth on it. But contrary to popular belief on the right, welfare is not the primary cause for the wealth disparity between Black Americans and white Americans. It is not the main reason why too many Black people live under the poverty line. And honestly, I'll just say it anyway. Say it, even though people should know it already. Most Black people do not live in poverty, but there is a high percentage of us who do. Now, I'm not saying, before I get started, I'm not saying that welfare is not an issue. I'm not saying that over-reliance on the government isn't a bad thing. It is a bad thing. It has caused damage. And yes, there are ways in which it has contributed to fatherlessness and the breakdown of the Black family and all those things. What I'm saying is it's not the main thing. And the problem is far deeper than just saying welfare shouldn't have been a thing and everything would have been all right, because that's not true either. So if conservatives are going to really understand the origins of the problems facing the Black community, it has to take a more holistic look. It has to dig deeper. It has to pick up a damn book and start looking into this stuff. And when we do this, we're going to realize that welfare is just one of several factors in this equation. So my question was on Twitter, why hasn't welfare caused poverty in the white community to the same extent as it has the Black community? Now, a lot of people, I think, misunderstood my question, and I probably could have worded it better. I didn't word it the way I just said it right here. So it may have been a little bit more confusing, but they were saying, yeah, there's a lot of poor white people on welfare, and it's caused some of the same problems. Yeah, I recognize that. But you can't argue, especially since a lot of your conservative influencers don't argue this, you can't argue that it's impacted the white community or white America to the same extent as it has Black America. I mean, 23% of welfare recipients are Black. That is disproportionate. It's not as disproportionate as people might think. And I'm sure when I do end up looking at the exact percentage of Black people who actually are on welfare, like as in what percentage of the Black population is on welfare, it's going to be a lot lower than a lot of people think. I forgot to look that up before I did this video, but that's okay. But if the issue were actually welfare, then if that theory holds, then there should be rampant poverty among white Americans. It should have destroyed the white family. I know their divorce rates are high too, but nobody can argue that it's having the same impact. The vast majority of white people do not need to use welfare. And I'm sure the percentage of those who do is probably lower than Black people and Latinos. So that already kind of should already create some doubt, because it did with me. But the bottom line is that white people have benefited from welfare quite a bit over the past few decades. They were able to use welfare before Black people were ever able to use it. So if it has such a devastating impact, it should have been devastating them before it ever devastated the Black community, and it hasn't. This is because Black people and other people of color, quote unquote, were denied a lot of the welfare services that started in the 30s under FDR, especially when he did the New Deal. We were excluded from a lot of that stuff. And not only were we excluded from welfare, but when the New Deal came along and it started getting people back to work, guess who got the first pick at jobs? It was white Americans. When Black Americans finally got access to jobs, they got positions with lower wages, just by default. Both state and local governments and the federal government, well, I'm sorry, let me back that up. State and local governments were responsible for administering almost all of the federal New Deal programs. So most of these governments, especially in the South, were made up mostly of white people, and they were racist as you know what. So they made sure that they excluded Black people from the most important benefits that the New Deal provided. For example, the Social Security Act of 1935, it specifically prohibited domestic and agricultural workers from receiving benefits. Who were the agricultural and domestic workers? That would be Black people, they'd be Blacks and Latinos. Now, when it came to labor regulations that were going on around the same time, Black workers were also excluded from that. Now, I'm not a fan of unions, but this is still relevant. Many unions, especially in the South, and well, that happened in the North too, but they had explicit clauses in their documentation that said that only white people could be members of those unions. So the employer was forced to bargain only with white workers, and guess who got the boot? That would be the Black employees. Now, there's also the National Labor Relations Act of 1935. And here's the thing. This also excluded Black workers, or it would discriminate against them. So at that time, we also have to remember that it was still legal back then for companies to discriminate on basis of race as far as who they hired. So Black people were not allowed to get into well-paying positions. So it wasn't just the government that was ensuring that Black people couldn't get good jobs. It was also racist business owners that were ensuring that Black people were relegated to the lowest paying positions. So let me go here. Okay, yes. And on top of all of that I just said, which would be enough, but on top of all that, you had redlining. And this resulted in mortgage credit being denied in Black neighborhoods. So Black people couldn't get insurance on their mortgages, or they would just be denied mortgages outright. It ensured that Black people had to live in a certain section of the city, and they weren't given the same benefits as whites living in other neighborhoods. Then there's a GI Bill. So if you were a veteran and you were Black, you wouldn't get access to the 30-year guaranteed mortgages that would be guaranteed under the GI Bill. White soldiers were able to take advantage of that, which means that they were able to buy homes, which means that they were able to build generational wealth. All of these policies and all of this discrimination that I just mentioned was specifically designed to put white Americans ahead of Black Americans. This didn't happen naturally. This happened as part of an actual insidious plan that was developed by the federal government, by state governments, by local governments. So we bring in welfare, right? So you have welfare to help Black people get out of poverty. You have the Great Society by LBJ, and you have other programs, and some of those actually did help, but it did not close the wealth gap, and it did result in a disproportionate number of Black Americans being dependent on the government, which makes it impossible to build generational wealth. And I do believe that that was done on purpose because the people who put it into action were racist. I'm not saying that they're racist now, although some probably are, but the thing is, welfare is going to hit you harder. It's going to hit your community harder. It's going to do more damage to the Black community because of all of these other policies that did not apply to white Americans. These policies were designed to benefit white Americans. So when people ask me about white privilege, that's what I'm talking about. That's why I say I believe in white privilege. I just don't necessarily believe in it in the way that the left does. Now, when I say white privilege, I'm not blaming anybody living today for that. If you're white and you're watching this, yeah, you benefited from this stuff, and that's not your fault. So you shouldn't be blamed. I know the hard left is going to blame you. No sensible Black person or white person blames you for what happened back then. It's just a way of describing what happened. People think that because, and this was even argued in the debate, they kept arguing, well, redlining is illegal. They made it illegal. They made this stuff illegal. Okay, that's great. But it being illegal does not mean that the impact goes away. If it's legal for me to take a baseball bat and break your leg, and then tomorrow they make it illegal, guess what? Your leg is still broken, and it's going to take a while to heal up. That's what happened over history with the Black community, as opposed to what happened with the white community. So when people say that it was welfare that led to poverty and fatherlessness and crime, you're talking about a small part of it. Because if those policies hadn't been in place, and if Black people had the same opportunities back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way on up, things might have been different. So you would have had Black people who fell on hard times, who used welfare, got back on their feet, and were still able to create that generational wealth. So do you see the difference? Does that make sense? That's what I want. That's what I want to debate about. And unfortunately, the person who was the person on the left, I think they were trying to articulate some of this stuff, but they really weren't able to. I'm not trying to criticize. I'm just saying, I mean, maybe he doesn't know this issue as well as others do. But that argument is very easy to dismantle. When people say it's just, and then on top of that, there's the culture argument. Well, there's so much crime in the Black community. 1350. Despite making up 13% of the population, Black people commit 50% of all the violent crimes and homicides. Blah, 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 blah. Right? Not a single one of them will actually ask why that's the case, because a lot of these people, again, some of it's ignorance, a lot of it's ignorance, but some of these people like that statistics because they can just throw it out there, leave it there, and not entertain any conversation as to why those numbers got the way they were, because they want you to believe that disparity in the homicide rate is because of Black culture. That's what they want to convince you. Some want you to, again, like I said before, some want you to think that Black people are more genetically predisposed to being violent, and that's what they'll use 1350 for. The rest are using it to imply that it's Black culture, and maybe not necessarily genetics, but somehow Black culture turned sour and we just all started liking free stuff and killing each other and drinking 40s on our front porches. That's also not true. And you guys have heard my argument against it, because it's not that I don't believe the statistics are true, although, I mean, there's some valid arguments that it might be actually lower than what they're saying, but I have no problem believing that gang violence has led to a disproportionate number of or percentage of homicide victims who are at least 50%, they're Black victims killed by Black people due to gang violence. But if you're so worried about numbers, and the reason I know that they're trying to make it sound like this is Black culture is because none of them will acknowledge the fact that the people who engage in these violent crimes make up a really small percentage of the entire Black population. They'll make it sound like, oh, it's like Black people just killing each other willy-nilly. No, vast majority don't do it. Don't commit any of those crimes. So I wanted to debunk that myth. Again, I'm not saying that welfare is not an issue at all. but it is one in a long list. I mean, again, without the other factors being present, welfare would not have had the impact that it has had. And by the way, it's not just welfare that leads to fatherlessness. I mean, we also have something called the war on drugs, which was started by Richard Nixon, a Republican, and it was continued by Democrats and Republicans ever since. And we still really haven't stopped it. But that's another issue for another day. So what do you guys think? And again, I'm going to be talking about this again because I want to drill down more on the numbers. I think I want to go into this welfare thing a little bit more because it's a very interesting subject, and this myth needs to die. I mean, and like I said, if we're really going to understand, if the right is going to understand the issues that face the Black community, we've got to get out of our talking points. We've got to get out of our go-to lines that we just use whenever we're talking about these things. And we need to wake up. We need to be more informed because a lot of us have been miseducated. I believe that the person who was making these arguments is miseducated. He's not a stupid person. He's not a bad person. He's a decent guy. And I had a conversation with him about other stuff when we were doing the debate. But I just think most conservatives are uneducated on this issue. So let's see. What else we got here? Yeah, and see, and here's the thing: there were a lot of people on that Twitter thread that got it right, or at least they were moving in the right direction, acknowledging that there were other government policies that made it worse. So, okay, so the Alchemist says, "When you truly want something, the whole world conspires to make it happen." Oh no, you didn't say that. Never mind. That's just from the book. You said, "From my knowledge and research, it's a combination of government complicity and racial animosity. Several Black financial institutions were bombed." Yeah, you're right. You had what happened to Black Wall Street, right? I mean, Black people were thriving. They built a thriving city, and then racist white people came to destroy it. Although we don't usually hear about what happened after that. They built it back up again. So Black people can build even in the most racist of circumstances. That's something that Chloe Valdery has been talking about on her Twitter feed. What else we got here? Nothing gets a boomer heated like a welfare conversation. Oh man. Let's see. Oh wait, that's about Kaepernick. Okay. Scott Messing. I'm a boomer and I'm not heated. I generally learn from these videos. More perspective is always better to form an informed whole. Thank you. Thank you. You're amazing. You're incredible. And I wish more people, not just boomers, I wish more people thought that way. Because again, it's not just boomers who are spouting this crap. I mean, I think I will call this boomercon thinking because it originated with them, but it's carried down and people bought into it. Let's see. What else we got? Welfare is low-hanging fruit. Yes, it is. It is. Especially since a lot of conservatives have made good points about welfare. I'm not, like I said, I'm not denying all of their argument here. I mean, Thomas Sowell talked about it. I believe Walter E. Williams used to talk about it. I'm not saying their arguments are invalid. I'm just saying that, and for all I know, they've talked about the other issues as well. I haven't read a lot of either of them. I've recently bought a bunch of their books, so I will be getting to them. But for all I know, they talk about the stuff that I just talked about too. It's just that certain conservative media figures and influencers decided to just cherry pick. Let's see. This is a question. What do you attribute Black women were more likely to have been married by age 35 than their white counterparts until 1970? What do you think was the catalyst for this shift? So, I mean, speaking of welfare, I mean, there was the issue of the government not wanting Black men and women to be married. And so like I said, that did contribute. I also think the fact that a lot of women had to go to work or were encouraged to go to work rather than having a home where the man works and the wife stays home, that became increasingly difficult to do. That probably had something to do with it as well. But at the end of the day, I think the policies that specifically placed Black Americans behind white Americans contributed to a lot of that. So you have a mishmash or what's the word I want to use? Or you have a cornucopia of racist government policies that contributed to this problem. And by the way, when I'm talking about Black culture, I'm not pretending like Black culture is perfect. No culture is perfect, right? Black people talk about issues that are going on in the community and the things that we need to do to fix them. So some of this could have been cultural to a certain extent, depending on where you lived. It could depend on a variety of factors, but it's not the main thing. Let's see. Yeah, The Watchmen on HBO discusses Tulsa, Oklahoma in some detail. Black people were thriving. Yeah, that was a great show, The Watchmen. I don't know if they brought it back yet, or I don't know if they're going to do another season, but that's a great show. A lot of people don't even know about what happened in Tulsa. They don't know about Black Wall Street, and they don't know about, all the stuff that followed. So I'm glad that they included that. And I wrote a piece on it last year because the Republican mayor of Tulsa is leading a project to unearth the bodies of the people who were killed there. And when I wrote about that, I had tons of comments from conservatives saying, I never knew this happened. A lot of them saying, I lived in Oklahoma and I never heard about this. So, I'm thinking about doing another article on it because I'm sure there's been updates, but it's important that people be educated about this stuff. This should not have been left out of the history. More minimum wage laws also used to hurt Black people. Yes, although I'm not as conversant on that subject just yet. That's on my list to dig into. I can't remember exactly how it was, but I know it was used to exclude Black people from certain types of work. I just have to remember how the dots connected. It's been a while since I've looked into it. I need that article. Yeah, I'll get on it. I also want to do an article on the other Black Wall Streets as well, because there was more than just one. Okay, so let's move on to the last thing here. I think I've become addicted to Gatorade. It's so good on ice. Okay. All right. So I want to talk about really quick about Liz Cheney. I was debating on whether or not I should talk about it because I'm kind of sick of her, but at this point it's okay because we're probably not going to be hearing as much about her anymore, which I'm sure a lot of us appreciate. I'm just going to pull something up here. So what's happening is that obviously the establishment media is crying about this, right? She's their favorite Republican because she was obsessed with Trump. Now, I'm going to reiterate some things here. A lot of people think that Cheney's demotion was all about Trump. And people who are saying that don't really understand what's going on the right. You don't see a lot of people on the right saying that. You see mostly people on the left saying it. But anybody who hates Trump thinks that everything is about Trump. So they're going to see this as just about Trump. And like I said, for some people it is. I'll admit that. There are some people on the right who only dislike Liz Cheney because she hates Trump. And that's it. No policy, no nothing, no establishment. Like there's no other reason. Just like studies show that 99.9% of people on the left love Liz Cheney just because she hates Trump. I made that up, but still, that's probably true. But what I've been saying is that what's going on with Liz Cheney represents an underlying conflict that is going on the right. And it's the issue of the non-establishment, like the rank and file base, against the establishment elites. Because remember, some people wanted this to happen in February, and a lot of Republicans defended her, and she kept her position, even though she voted to impeach him when he was already out of office, because she was, pretending that he caused, the riots on January the 6th. But over that time between now and February, she's been wearing out her welcome. It's not because she dislikes Trump, it's because she is obsessed with Trump. She can't help but talk about Trump all the time. And according to what people were saying behind the scenes, her fixation on the former president, who's no longer in office and is not going to be able to overturn the results of the election, despite what he claims, she's still obsessed with it. So anytime she gets a chance to run in front of a camera and bash Trump, she takes it. Even when Trump released that ridiculous, press release saying, talking about how he had the election stolen, blah, 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 she couldn't wait to get in front of a camera and talk about how horrible Trump is. And the thing is, what most people in the Republican Party, and even a lot of the establishment, what they realize is you can disagree with Trump as to how the election went and still recognize that it's smart to work with him to move the party forward rather than trying to marginalize him and then marginalizing his base and causing even more division. It makes more sense to see where there are areas of common ground and move things forward. And I agree with that. Cheney was standing in the way of that happening. So she had to go. This has, some people are saying, oh, this is cancel culture. A lot of people don't know what cancel culture is. Maybe I should do just a thing on that. Like, y'all need to figure out what cancel culture is. Cancel culture isn't voting somebody out of a position. And if you think that it was just because she didn't like Trump, again, you're ignoring facts, because everybody knew that she didn't like Trump and she was defended in February. No, it's because she has an overwhelming fixation on him. And on top of that, the reason why the rank and file want her gone is because she represents an establishment that did nothing for 20 years, even when they were in power, even when they had both chambers of Congress and the White House. They go to Congress, they make all these promises, and then they do absolutely nothing. They work with the Democrats to have open borders while telling us that they're trying to cut down on illegal immigration. That's just one example. That's why people don't like Liz Cheney. The people who wanted Liz Cheney gone wanted her gone before she ever got into this feud with Trump. And they want the rest gone too, by the way. There's a whole movement to primary these people. I'll have to check on that, see how that's going. And I interviewed Scott Presler on it. He's one of the people leading that charge. But anyway, after saying all that, after it became apparent that she was going to lose her position, the New York Times put out a report saying that about 100 Republicans are leaving to start another party. They're threatening to leave unless the Republican Party decides to get rid of Trump or to marginalize him or what have you. If the Republican Party doesn't comply with their demands, then they're going to take their ball and go home. Now, I actually got a clip of them being asked about this, and I got a clip of the response. So let me pull that up for you really quick. Hold on. Yeah, here it is. Right. Right. Yeah, see that was a valid point. I get that. I understand that. Okay, I'm not sure how I feel about that argument. No, I get it. But I mean, okay, but it's not all about Trump, though. I mean, okay, I get it. I mean, you don't like Trump. There are things that I don't like about Trump too. I got to settle down. I get it. But you gotta see where you can work with Trump. I mean, you have to understand that things have to change, right? No, I'm not talking about changing your diaper. I'm saying that things have to change in the party. Dude, really? Look, all I'm saying is that we can find areas of common ground. We don't have to agree about Trump, but there's got to be a way that we can fix these problems. And I don't know. I mean, I don't understand why you're so fixated on Trump in the first place. No, he didn't start the riots. You know he didn't start the riots. He told people to go there peacefully and protest. Oh, for the love of God. Oh, holy birthing person of God. Okay, you know what? Let's talk about this later, okay? All right, so you see, I mean, they have some very strong opinions, and they're threatening to leave the party if the GOP doesn't get rid of Trump. So here's the thing. What's funny about this too is a person who's leading this charge. Remember that dude who started his grift by being in the White House under Trump and writing an op-ed for the New York Times in which he said that he's working to thwart Trump's agenda, and he was all anonymous with it. And he used the word lodestar in the article. See, don't never trust anybody who uses the word lodestar when they're trying to virtue signal. Never, ever. Like, I don't care who it is. If anybody uses the word lodestar when they're trying to virtue signal about how awesome they are, don't trust them, because they will stab you in the back without a second thought. So this guy is leading this initiative. He still considers himself a Republican. That's fine. That's his prerogative. You know, being a Republican doesn't mean having to agree on everything. But yes. So here's the article from the New York Times. More than 100 Republicans, including some former elected officials, are preparing to release a letter this week threatening to form a third party if the Republican Party does not make certain changes, according to an organizer of the effort. The statement is expected to take aim at former President Donald J. Trump's stranglehold on Republicans, which signatories to the document have deemed unconscionable. Quote, when in our democratic republic, forces of conspiracy, division, and despotism arise, it is the patriotic duty of citizens to act collectively in defense of liberty and justice, unquote. Reads the preamble to the full statement, which is expected to be released on Thursday, at which time I will be mocking the hell out of it. The article continues. The effort comes as House Republican leaders are expected on Wednesday to oust Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming from their ranks because of her outspoken criticism of Mr. Trump's election lies. Remember, this is the New York Times, y'all. Miles Taylor, who's the lodestar guy, says that this is a first step. He says, quote, this is us excuse me. He says, quote, this is us saying that a group of more than 100 prominent Republicans think that the situation has gotten so dire with the Republican Party that it is now time to seriously consider whether an alternative might be the only option, unquote. The list of people signing the statement includes former officials at both the state and national level who were once governors, members of Congress, ambassadors, cabinet secretaries, state legislators, and Republican Party chairmen, according to Mr. Lodestar. Now, of course, Mr. Lodestar did not name the signers, but I guess we'll find out tomorrow. Now, Reuters did report that some former governors, Tom Ridge of Pennsylvania and Christine Todd Whitman of New Jersey, are going to sign it. For a former transportation secretary, Mary E. Peters, and former Representative Charlie Dent of Pennsylvania, Barbara Comstock of Virginia, Reed Ribble of Wisconsin, and Mickey Edwards of Oklahoma. Have you ever heard of any of these people? I mean, I've heard of Tom Ridge, obviously. I've heard of Barbara Comstock. But does anybody know who these people are? Because, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Mr. Lodestar also declined to reveal the specific changes that the coalition was planning to demand of the Republican Party. He did say, Mr. Taylor did say, I'm still a Republican, but I'm hanging on by the skin of my teeth because how quickly the party has divorced itself from truth and reason. I'm one of those in the group that feels very strongly that if we can't get the GOP back to a rational party that supports free minds, free markets, and free people, I'm out. And a lot of people are coming with me. So that's Mr. Lodestar. I'm sure that he doesn't really sound like that, but that's how he sounds in my head. I hear the news differently from most people. So the way I just did it, that's the way I hear him talking, even though he's probably not actually talking that way. But here's the thing. I was just talking about this, right? There is an underlying civil war on the right, and this is just a part of it. I told you that this Liz Cheney ousting, this is shots fired, first shots fired. So yeah, I expect people to leave. A lot of people think that this is going to affect voter turnout. Mitt Romney was out there like, hey, I'm Mitt Romney and I'm tone deaf, and I think that this will lose us votes and lose us seats in the House. Again, these people don't know how to read the room. And Liz Cheney is still showing that she doesn't know how to read the room. They think that they're going to be able to pull the Republican Party back to the pre-Trump days, and that ain't going to happen. So yeah, some are going to leave, but most people don't care. Most people want something different. They're not going to, I mean, they might lose like 15 votes because of this. Nobody's going to go to the poll saying, I'm not going to vote for Republicans because I really want Liz Cheney as conference chair. Nobody's thinking that deeply about it. Now, people on the left are thinking and hoping that will happen. But again, people on the left don't understand what's going on the right. They've been listening to their media too much, and their media is telling them, oh, this is a whole white nationalist takeover. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be run by Q people. Now, the problem is that a lot of these leftists don't really talk to conservatives, or they don't really pay attention to conservatives. They don't really look at what actual conservatives are saying. They don't know how to tell the difference between a fringe person and a regular conservative. So they're going to be sorely disappointed when it's not taken over by the people that they wanted to be taken over by. Yeah, some of those will be in the mix. I mean, we already have it. I mean, we do have Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's one person. So that's what's going to happen. And here's the thing. Here's going to be the response to these people when they say we're going to take our ball and go home and start our own party. You ready? Here's going to be the response from the rest of the base. They're going to say 2 words: bye and Felicia. They're going to say bye, Felicia. That's what's going to happen. Nobody cares. These are the people that we want gone anyway, because these are the people that made Trump necessary in the first place. So they can be as tone deaf as they want, but I'm getting excited for this, guys. I'm loving this. Like, people are like, well, we shouldn't have conflict on the right. Yes, we should. Yes, we should. We need conflict. Iron sharpens iron. No, we don't need to be beating each other up. We don't need fistfights, but we need debate. We need fiery debate. We need to battle it out on the battlefield of ideas. We need to sell our spiel in the marketplace of ideas. That's how this is supposed to work, y'all. All right, so let's see what you guys think. Let's see. All right. Oh, wait, I went too far. Okay, really, sis? Play the banjo for us, Uncle Ruckus. See, now that's just mean. And I don't have my banjo. It's going to take me too long to go and grab it. And, you know, I'll do that for you on the next one. I'll play a special song for you. But really, I only know one song, and that was the song that I put on Twitter. So I just be playing that song again. But I'm still learning others. But now I had I had a banjo lesson yesterday, and I'm doing really well. So he led me to where I can learn some new licks and some new songs. So I'll come up with something special just for you, Olivia Rondo, because I love you. Let's see what else we got here. Yes. It's funny seeing libs and Dems supporting the daughter of a neocon warmonger legend, one who shares similar beliefs as her dad, just because she trashes Orange Man. Now, here, to be fair, I have seen some on the left taking other people on the left to task for not being principled. I have seen somebody saying, you know, Liz Cheney is not a good person. She supports war, yada, yada, yada. She's this or that or whatever. I don't even agree with all of what they're saying, but at least some were consistent. But yeah, you're right. Most of them just threw their principles out the window once Liz Cheney said Orange Man bad. See, and this is a good point. See, Arnold gets it. Liz Cheney is establishment, old guard, and she's an example of a shift and is over obsessed with Trump, no value to the party anymore. That's true. I mean, if you're going to be that obsessed with Trump, you don't have anything to offer at that point. Again, there are other people who don't like Trump who aren't getting this, who aren't having this happen to them. Ben Sass. I haven't even criticized Ben Sass. I don't really care how people feel about Trump. I care about, do you want to move the party forward or do you want to move it backwards? You can dislike Trump and still want to move the party forward. I see Ben Sass as that type of person. I don't see him as establishment like that. And by the way, not everybody in the establishment is bad. Some people, recognize the need for change. It's amazing to me that leftists don't understand that when they're having a war with their establishment and their far left progressive wing. I mean, it's really that simple. It's not that complicated. It's not just everything is about Trump. Let's see what else we got. That's wrong. What's wrong? Just because I talk to the people who are going to walk away if they don't get their way, I think they deserve to be heard. I don't see what's wrong with that. I mean, free speech. They get to say what they need to say. I would have gone longer, but I think he said something about needing his bottle or something. I don't know, whatever. Something about a binky. Um, yep, the Democratic Party pretty much praises anyone who's anti-Trump, even if they're war criminal assholes. uh, uh, we need to weed out folks who aren't true conservatives. Yep, that's what's happening. That is what's happening. And I'm not going to say that all of them aren't real conservatives, but a lot of them aren't. Let's see. They are weeding themselves as we keep pushing. Yeah, that's happening. I mean, that is what's happening. There's no need to do like a huge purge. A lot of these people are going to leave themselves, and it's not going to be a big percentage of the party. Most people are on board with going in a different direction. Now, what worries me is what direction do they want to go in, right? So that's what we need to be aware of. But you're not going to get a lot of people leaving because Trump is a thing. Let's see. Amash did not really like the Trump establishment. He left for the LP. Yeah, I mean, Amash was always more libertarian as also. And I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff that he said about Trump. But again, I get it. I understood where he was coming from, but I didn't buy into the whole impeachment fiasco. I thought that was a little silly. But in general, but he's a principled guy, so I can respect him. I can still respect him. I can still agree with him on other issues. And he had some very interesting things to say. He was on, what show was that? He was on with either Dave Smith or Michael Malice. I can't remember. But yeah, he had some very interesting things to say about how Congress works. Let's see. Oh God, Patriot J, you want me to bring up the banjo too? All right, fine. Hold on. Golly, people are killing me. But I'm not going to tap dance, and I'm not going to do it in blackface. All right. And I'm only doing this because shout out to Patriot J because you graduated law school. Congratulations. Everybody give Patriot J a hand. He's awesome. Let's see. I don't have much room. I got my screen, so I'm going to have to take this down. You guys are messing up my whole show. All right. Let's see if I don't suck. Now remember, I'm still learning, so I'm not that good at it yet. Let me adjust my little finger picks here. All right. I'll do some Cripple Creek for you. Wait, hold on. Hold up. Wait a minute. Yeah, while I'm doing this, everybody congratulate Patriot J. Seriously, though, that's awesome. I'm glad. I think you're going to do some great things with that degree. I think you're going to go places. I don't know what type of law you want to practice, but you got some things going on. It's going to be awesome. I'm already seeing it. Just don't forget it's little people. You know, when you soar like on the like an eagle, like Jim Eagle. I'm messing up too much. Let me try that again. All right, that's Cripple Creek. I don't know who wrote that song actually, but it's an old Appalachian folk song, and it's a big bluegrass hit. And it's a cool song, but there are a lot more that I want to learn. And before y'all start, making white jokes like, the banjo's instrument for white people, we invented the instrument. All right. As a matter of fact, I think I might do a video behind the paywall on why I started learning how to play the banjo, and I'll talk a little bit about the history. But I'm taking the banjo back for the black man. All right. Let's see. And thank y'all for the super chats. I really appreciate it. We was banjos. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to tweet that out. We was banjos. We was. And we should be. We should take it back. I get it. It's got kind of a problematic history at some point, but it's our instrument and we should take it back. Damn it. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And please share this video. I appreciate all of your support. If you want to support my work, you can go to you can subscribe to my online community at afreshperspective.locals.com. It's only $4.99 per month, and you'll get special content that other people don't get, like me talking about the banjo for a half hour or however long I do it. All right. But until next time, keep your minds free. Yeah, and hit that like.